Our weekly Good 10 Minutes. We'll talk some NBA, our YouTube exclusive for the Ryen Russillo Show. We'll get to some of your mailbag questions at the end. I want to start with OKC. From 24-1 to 6-6 in their last 12 games. The game winner by Booker against Phoenix. And then, you can do, hey, back-to-back. You can obviously sense that who hurt you? Like people arguing that every time a team lost that it was travel and back-to-back. It was back-to-back, but they lost to Charlotte. By 27. Charlotte's fun. I'm going to do a minute on them, but kind of weird. Kind of weird that the OKC Thunder are 6-6 over 12 games. The Phoenix game, I went back with football. I'll usually just go back and spend Monday watching all the games that I feel like I need to get my eyes on. And I would say there was one thing against Phoenix that alarming is too strong a word. It was just something I was noticing that perhaps they can get a little too hunt happy, hunting the switches, looking for the person that they're targeting who they think is the worst defensive player and they have the best advantage. It was kind of funny because Booker was hunting SGA and SGA was hunting Booker as they were kind of going back and forth with that. That's something that, one of the Celtics things that will forever be, I don't know. I'll think about it every day the rest of my life, but I think about it a lot in that Boston, even when they won the NBA championship, they would have these spells offensively where they'd get so determined for the advantage switch. And then you would just go, you guys are just going to do this the whole stretch down here. So it felt like Boston had this kind of offensive flaw, and then they win an NBA championship. And then again last year, because look, I think they were going to lose that series even when Tatum went down, with the Achilles injury. For anyone that revisits that and goes, well, if Tatum hadn't got hurt, I'm like, I don't know, man. That looked bad for Boston. So it was this thing that if you watch them enough, you just kind of like, what? You're just going to do this all the time? And then it's like, well, who are any of us to criticize it when you win an NBA championship with this approach? And yet you felt like that was one of the things you're like, I know the record's really good. I know the team is really good. I know they just won a title. But God, I really hate watching some of this turn taking in this predictable style of stuff here. And look, OKC is built on defense, so even being too critical of any of the offensive stuff feels excessive. But that's what I was seeing, at least in the Phoenix game a little bit. I was like, oh, this kind of reminds me a little bit of that. It was not the case last night. Charlotte came out, just dominated in that second quarter. So I looked at some of the numbers, play type numbers, comparing this year and last year with OKC. I was looking for, is there more isolation this year than last year? Barely. It's basically the same where they rank. Pick and roll ball handler, 18% of their possessions, 5th in the NBA. Last year, 18% of the possessions, 7th in the NBA. Transition numbers this year dipped a little. They're 20th in transition at 17% of their possessions. Last year, they were 11th, but it was only 19% of the possessions. So we're really only talking about like a couple percentage points. So even though the ranks, like if somebody said, oh, well, they were 11th in transition, they've gone to 20th. So that's a big part of the problem while this team is taking a step back. Honestly, I think Jaylen Williams coming back and trying to get himself in shape and shooting at the worst that he's ever shot it in his career is probably part of that. There's also probably something to be said of like, you've won a title, you start 24-1. There's likely going to be some malaise there. Their defense is number 2 in the NBA over this stretch. So in these last 12 games, when they've gone 6-6, it's still the second best defense in the league. I think Detroit's number 1. Their net rating in this 12-game stretch is still 4th in the NBA. The shooting during this stretch is just not very good. They're rebounding. They're not a strong rebounding team. They're 25th in rebounding over this stretch as well. So honestly, when I watch them through this period, there's really no alarm. There's nothing that's alarming about it. The offense is taking a dip, reincorporating Jaylen Williams. They are so good defensively that, when your default setting is, hey, we'll just be the best defense in the NBA, that's such a great thing to have, even during some of these tough stretches, that, I'm not going to get worried about it. Maybe there's a bigger picture thing here where it goes from the way that the Thunder were talked about. It's like, well, with the new apron and the way they set this whole thing up, and with all the flexibility that they have with draft picks and all this stuff. And we'll see how many of those draft picks actually end up conveying to them, because there's language on a couple of those where you're like, well, if they actually don't get it this year, it might not be the stockpile that it looks like on paper. But this is a really wide range of conversation if you're going from, oh, they're going to win the next 5 titles to, is this team a little overrated? That's a wide gap. That doesn't happen a lot. Dynasty to, yeah, nobody's afraid of him anymore. And I've heard some of that, nobody's afraid of him. Okay. That's fine. But as much as the dynasty stuff, because sports, I mean, we've been around long enough. We've seen all this stuff. So you're sitting there all summer going, they're going to win the next 4 championships. That's just not what's going to happen. It's almost a near impossibility. Just human nature alone. You're just not going to grind the same way after multiple years of success. But swinging it the other way, I've started to see some conversation in the last couple of weeks with these losses where it's like, oh, was this team really even that good? And again, that is a wide range of perception to go from they're going to be a dynasty to, is this team overrated? I'm not worried about it. Charlotte's a lot of fun. LaMelo's been back, and you can see, although I'd love to see this team run it a little bit more with Knipple. Some of the stuff Brandon Miller's doing these last couple of weeks, I mean, he's gone off 33, 31, 28 in 3 of the last 5 games. I mean, he just shoots it so well. And then he has some of these highlight plays where you're like, this guy is just fierce. I like Diabate. If you look at Sion James defensively, they at least have something they can go to if they don't want to play Sexton, which with LaMelo back, Sexton and LaMelo to close a game if it's tight and they don't like their defensive matchup. That's not going to throw Sexton. There was one game where he was getting subbed out and he kind of had his hands out like, are you fucking serious? I'm not going to close the game here. And so that was something that was at least worth looking at there. Although what they did to Curry off the ball, still, I think it was like misdemeanor assault. Some of the stuff you see with Curry off the ball, you're like, I can't believe like none of this stuff ever gets called. And yet we call some of this other stuff where a guy just veers into somebody, free throws fall down, boom. But Charlotte is a lot of fun. I mean, it's a team that went, what are they, 9-9 in their last 18? They are. I just looked it up because I wrote it down a little bit earlier. Salon getting in there. Tijan Saloon. It looks like Saloon, but everybody calls him Salon. And so, yeah, there's just a lot on this team that's a lot of fun to watch, but still sort of strange to lose by 30 to them at home. The headline yesterday, Trae Young, trade market. I don't need to do the Trae Young, the player segment for the 10th time. 10 is probably low, so I'm not going to do that. I thought the wording on the report was interesting that the Hawks were working with Aaron Mintz and the rest of his representatives, Austin Brown, I believe, in there, Drew, I think, as well, CA. And that there was this collaborative, it was like a very positive message, right? It was like, oh yeah, everybody's like totally psyched about this and on the same page and, working to see possible trade destinations. Well, we know the reason behind that is because Atlanta does not want to give Trae, nor will they give Trae the extension that he wants. He has the player option to opt out for next year, $49 million. Probably going to pick that one up. So whenever I see the language that way, I'm like, is this one of those deals where the team, like they're clearly upset? Hey, you need to extend our guy. Oh, you're not going to extend our guy? Okay, so instead of like demanding a trade and making it a little weird and Trae being like public enemy number 1 in Atlanta, which I don't know that it could ever really happen because God, does that fan base love that dude. Is it the nicest trade demand? But then also the team in the front office going, hey, we have a pretty good idea of what his value is and what his value isn't. So if you want to go ahead and make the same calls that we make, and Mintz is so powerful that maybe this is where the agent can make something happen where it's like, hey, you need to do this for this player. And then, I have these other clients. Like this is part of the NBA agent game sometimes where you'll see some things happen. You're like, that doesn't, like, why would the team just kind of do that? And you're like, well, sometimes the agents have that kind of juice, and Mintz is certainly one of those guys. So you wonder if this is one of those deals where it's like, let's announce this in a nice way. It's like a PR spin on, we don't want to invest in him anymore. We like the rest of the team, and it's pretty clear we're better without him. He's really expensive. He's not going to get the contract he wants. If he doesn't get the contract he wants, he's probably not going to be the happiest dude ever around here. So, if you want to work on it, go ahead. But we've already made these calls. Now, if I were ownership with Atlanta, I'll never forget, I've told this a couple of times, but like Steve Phillips and I used to do a baseball show at ESPN, right? And he would talk like trade deadline. And he would say if he couldn't get anywhere with another baseball GM on some kind of deal, that he would tell his owner to then call the owner of the team that he was trying to deal with to just go over the head of the GM. And then you would be like, and I would just deny it or whatever. He said, we all did it to each other all the time. So it's not like I was the only one doing it. If I were Atlanta, I'd be calling up Vivek in Sacramento, being like, you have a stale franchise. You don't really have a ton going on there. Like, this is your guy. Here you go. Trae, light the beam, win 38 games. It's going to be a lot of fun. The kids are going to buy the jerseys. Like, we just did it for a bunch of years. It's a lot of fun. You're not going anywhere. So that might be the only thing if you're trying to salvage some kind of asset. But these other reports that they would have to attach some kind of asset to move him out, you're like, man, I mean, I don't like him as a player, but God, like attaching an asset. And that's because of the $49 million next year. Now the Wizards keep being brought up. I wouldn't do it if I were the Wizards. I don't, you're not going to get the New Orleans pick. I mean, that's a non-starter. And so if you're thinking like, well, what kind of pick are we going to get out of here that makes a lot of sense? Because here's the problem is that I don't think Trae's ever going to change as a player. And if you have these other players that I really like with Keyshawn, with some of the stuff Trey Johnson's done, developing Sarr, Bub, Koulibaly, there's a lot of guys on that team that when you watch Washington, you go, okay, well, there may be a couple pieces here that have a chance. I think if you bring Trae Young into that, then the development halts because he's not a good player to be developing young guys around. So, even if it's a team with Washington that has all this cap space, and then all of us, we should always remind ourselves of like some of the approaches where a GM goes, okay, well, I may not like the player, but asset wise, if we're just talking about asset management, this is unbelievable that I'm getting another piece to take on this contract. We have all this cap space. I think it's like 90 million or something next year. We're getting Trae Young for free and a bonus gift on top of everything else. Like, you may not like the player, but he's far too talented to turn down that kind of deal. It's a bit like the Beal transaction with Phoenix, where, I didn't really like who Beal was at that point. I don't know that I've ever seen a player that's more comfortable being the third option. He's like, hell, I'll be fourth option tonight if you guys want me to be. And knowing that you're giving up nothing. So it's like, hey, you're getting Beal for free. Yeah, except for the part where he makes like $50 million a year. So yes, the pieces out from the piece in a vacuum, you're like, you got Bradley Beal for nothing. It's like, no, but the problem is that he's really, really expensive. And Beal wouldn't get in anyone's way developmental wise, right? I think Trae goes to the next franchise pissed off at everybody to show, then he's like, look, watch me get my 30 and 10. And it's like, okay, but like, we want our lottery picks and our first rounders to also get shot attempts too. The Calvin Booth game, where were you for it? I was on the couch. I'm like, wait a minute. Denver came back and won this game against Philadelphia. They won in overtime. Had to watch that one. This game featured Peyton Watson playing 44 minutes, Jalen Pickett, 29 points in 42 minutes, Spencer Jones, 43 minutes, Zeke Naji, 32 good minutes from Zeke Naji. At one point, they had a lineup with Strother, Naji, Pickett, Watson, Bruce Brown. I think Hunter Tyson came in for Bruce Brown. So there may be a chance that it was like Brown, the only established guy out of that group. For Tyson, that may have only been a minute going up against Embiid, Maxey, VJ, Grimes, and Paul George. Damn. Embiid and aside, that Knicks game, he's moving better on offense. Defensively, people are putting him in every action. Brunson was going at him. But there's a little burst, a little bit more from him the last few games. And I know he's always coming back from injury and always trying to work himself into shape and whatever. Like, which of the 4 late turnovers was your favorite? But he is at least moving better on offense. I was kind of wishing, and I knew this was going to happen because Mike Malone was working for ESPN. If he had been on the post-game desk for this game, that would have been, I would have recorded it, never deleted it. Now, it's probably a little unfair to be like, hey, look at what happened last night. This means Calvin Booth was always right and Malone was wrong to play the guys. I mean, look, there's some similarities here to Tom Thibodeau and Mike Brown, where you're watching some of the guys in the Knicks, maybe 2, and you're like, oh, you could have played Kolek a little bit more and given him some kind of chance here. I think we've probably seen enough of Zeke Naji that I don't know that he's good all of a sudden. I don't know that I was ever a huge Jalen Pickett guy, but he was on fire last night. But some of the Watson on ball drives, like they couldn't stay in front of him. That was terrific. Spencer Jones at one point had Paul George on the left side, locked him up. He was defending Maxey. Like these were his assignments, not just caught in a scramble or a switch. He was assigned to Maxey a couple possessions and then also to Embiid in overtime. This guy's incredible. Look, I'm not voting for the All-Star team, but some of the stuff that he does, and I don't know if it was the Durant game and some of those matchups where, you're not going to like stop Durant, but you could just see, like, if you're one of these established star players on offense and you're like, who's this guy again? And you're like, all right, let's get him, bring him up here. Let's switch into him. And then he's holding up defensively on some really good players. It's just a lot of fun to watch. I don't know if I feel like I've watched enough Zeke Naji to think that I don't know that it's going to come back around. It's like, I can't believe Malone didn't play this guy more. But at least for a night. And for a night, we should all talk about Jaylen Brown. His 50 piece against the Clippers this weekend was like fake. It was so good. And I mean fake and like that's going in. That shot's going to work. He just made that one. He was insane. And I'm telling you right now, there will never be another Jaylen Brown for me. I cannot think of another player from the draft to where he's at now with the circumstances around him with this Celtics team, where every time, I kind of talk about adjusted ceilings where you're watching players and be like, I kind of like this guy. Like we have to adjust the ceiling on him a little bit. I've adjusted the ceiling on Jaylen Brown like 7 times. And every time I'm like, okay, well, he can't be any better than this. He ends up being better. This is incredible. Like coming out of Cal, it was ugly. It was really ugly. They draft him and it was a 2-man draft, right? It was Simmons and it was Ingram. And then it's like, what the hell is going to happen with the rest of these guys? And then they go with the athlete from Cal, who was the big recruit. And I'd asked the Celtics a couple of years later, I was like, what was the thought process into the Jaylen Brown pick? Because I didn't really see it. It looked pretty ugly. Didn't look like he could dribble. Just wasn't sure what he was. And the whole thought was like Danny Ainge is just going, considering all the options and watching him, felt physically he was so gifted and his size that like it was like, if this guy works out, like this is what we're all looking for. This big wing on ball guy, shoot it a little bit, not getting stuck with the ball. Like it just felt like the upside for him was so much better. And Ainge went ahead and that's why I was big on, and a little maybe information there on the Ace Bailey pick. Because when Utah was in the lottery this year, I was like, this kind of reminds me a little bit of the reason they went with Jaylen Brown. And, it might just be Utah going, hey, wait a minute. Like, let's not be weird about this. Like, I know people are down on Ace Bailey in the pre-draft and all that kind of stuff, but like, he's a really big guy. There's some on-ball stuff. There's some high-end, like, dynamic stuff from him that's really, really special. You don't find a lot of these guys. So, we're just going to go ahead and take him. And that was kind of the thought with Brown. So then Brown, it's not out of the gates like he's lighting it up, but you're like, oh, okay, this guy's going to play a little bit. And then we're including him in all these trades. And then, he gets better and better. And then he gets signed to that massive contract. And you're like, how can Jaylen Brown be the highest paid player in the NBA? And it's like, do you even do that deal? Like, do you want to pay that guy that much money? He ends up being the number 2 in some huge, huge spots in the playoffs on his way to a championship. And then with Tatum out, I'm thinking like this might get a little ugly because of the inefficiency. Like he's just going to say like, hey, it's my time, which I think he kind of wants a little bit. I don't know that he loves being the number 2 to Tatum there. And I was like, I wonder if that'll kind of like mess him up a little bit. Like he'll be out to prove something this season in a way that doesn't lead to winning. And instead, they're one of the most surprising teams record-wise in the league. And he's taken it to an even higher level. I don't know if he's going to get MVP votes. He'd have to keep this up the entire season long. But every time I put kind of a cap on what I think he is possible of doing, he smashes right through it. And I don't know if there's ever going to be a player that I've done it like 7 different times. I'm like, okay, he's pretty good. Won't be an all-star. All right, he's an all-star, but he won't be this. All right, well, he can't be a one on a winning team and all these different things. Boom, boom, boom. Right through him every single time. All right, let's get to some mailbag stuff here. Bring in Steve.
Yo.
It's Rudy.
What's up?
Our mailbag is NBA mailbag rr@gmail.com. I know we have a couple questions from the gang, so fire them off.
Yeah, we'll start here. Near and dear to my heart. This is from Gordon. He says, "Hey Ryan, why do the
What's
Magic?"
up, Gordo?
Gordy, what's up, dude? Gadden, why do the Magic continue to play Tyus Jones? It's like this is a question
You want
straight
to take
out of
this one?
Magic Reddit. Yeah, yeah. You listen. This is one that you highlighted, so I'm happy to take it. He says, "I do not know what his plus minus is. It's probably not great, but I do know that he leads often. Leads often disappear when he's on the floor. Those minutes can go to Jace, to Panda, to Kane, who I was not familiar with until a couple weeks ago. What is wrong with the team saying, you know what, we made a mistake?"
Coaches love veteran players, especially on the ball. But you got to take this one because you're more locked into the Magic than I could ever be.
I think that's part of it. I think it's like, hey, maybe there was some like agent stuff where it's like, hey, if we're gonna bring you in, like he's gonna have this defined role, and I assume they're not gonna bail on that 3-4 months into the season. It has not been good. It's quite bad. He's terrible defensively and he's terrible shooting. The funny thing about Tyus is like I feel like he was on the trade market for like years. And remember he was in Memphis, and I think even when he was in Washington, people were like, "Oh man, like this guy, like why aren't these teams calling to get him in the building?" And this is probably why, because he's just kind of a limited, flawed player, and he can be good in certain things, but he just has not fit in whatsoever. I agree. Like Jace has looked kind of falling off the bench. The way Anthony Black has been playing, I wouldn't want to, I'd want to let him take ball handling responsibility for the most part. But yeah, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. Like I assume Mose wants a veteran point guard at times, and that's maybe why he does it. But I'd rather experiment during the regular season with younger guys and figure it out in the playoffs than try to keep doing something that clearly isn't working.
He is minus 13 on off. It's awful. It's
not good.
No, he hasn't been very good. But guess what? With Suggs' injury now, with the extended injury thing, with this whole team might just be cursed.
It's rough. It's not fun. I mean, it has been fun from the Anthony Black breakout perspective. Like that dude's been great, awesome. But like you hate having to like have these things happen because somebody's been hurt for so long. But I don't know, man. Just hoping we can get everybody healthy for the playoff run.
The only thing. Because I was thinking about this last night watching Brook Lopez in that Warriors game where they beat the Warriors. There are times with some older players where I think they're toast. Look, like 5 years ago to start the season, there was some Batum possessions games where I'm like, are you kidding? And they can't keep in the building long enough. Like Batum has been a absolute home run for the Clippers, but it just was so bad. Or it looked like he didn't even want the ball. And it was a very, very small sampling. So it was totally unfair. But when I was watching, I was like, oh my God, this guy's like done. And Brook Lopez looked done last year, right? Milwaukee they couldn't play him in that playoff series. And Brook had been declining now for a little while. I mean, he's an older player. And now he's had like this nicer stretch. The only thing I would say is that sometimes with older players, it can look really bad. And then it kind of like turns. It's not like Tyus is some big guy that would be out of shape, and now he's working himself into shape. Because I'm with the emailer here, and I'm with you. Like when I watch their games, I'm like, this doesn't look good at all. But it is strange how there are some older players in the past that I'm like totally over, like just completely dismissive of, and then they can put together like a nice little stretch. And I don't know if it's just a thing where it takes them longer. I also wonder, there's also another topic on like some of the training stuff that happens in the off season with some of these NBA trainers where I'm wondering, like, are you drilling moves and then the guys aren't playing basketball? That's a whole nother rant, which I think I've done one other time. So.
I get that. With Ty, I don't get the impression like Tyus is like washed necessarily. I just think he's a 5'10" point guard. Like there's some limitations to what he's actually able to do, and maybe you could hide that in certain circumstances, but it's not really being hidden with the Magic, especially for a team that wants to play good defense. So shout out to Batum though. I mean, Batum went to like maybe the most underrated player in the league when he was in Portland. Then he gets that big contract with the Hornets, looks completely washed, and then did he go to the Clippers right after that, and then kind of like has the resurrection. I've always liked Batum, but there was some weird years there in Charlotte.
Yeah, I was starting to just be out on French guys in general after the Boris Diaw Batum thing, where I'm like, so what do you guys do? You just take a couple of years off in a city you don't like, and then when you go somewhere that you do like, I mean, Boris Diaw 100% did that.
Yeah,
he's like, I don't care about this. I don't play here. And then it's like, oh, okay, now I'm going to go to San Antonio and care. So I don't know. I don't want to like mess up some of our diplomatic relationships.
Fair.
But,
Yeah.
yeah. What else you got?
All right. This is from Kevin. What's up, Ryan? 36, 5'10, 185. Don't bench much, but I work out almost every morning. Try to fight the slowing metabolism. Nice. NBA player comps, TJ McConnell. I can get hot from three. I feel like every like 30-something-year-old guy is TJ McConnell. Like, dude, but, whatever.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that – and by the way, get hot from three, and TJ McConnell's your comp.
Yeah, like get buckets around the paint, sneaky. That's probably what you're looking for
When I think about getting hot from three, I don't think about TJ McConnell.
Yeah, that's fair. Love the pod, travel pods especially. I've been to New Zealand, Spain, both after listening to the pod. Enjoyed your recommendations to hike the Ben Lomond Trail in Queenstown. Absolutely epic views. I would agree, tougher than Camelback in Phoenix. And eating at Vandal in Mallorca, fantastic meal. Also brought my wife to your live show in Philly. Nice.
Wow,
so now she can tolerate when I play the podcast in the car. Hell yeah, new listener. What's up?
Yeah, that New Zealand hike was the day where I came back and said, do I even like hiking? But then again, it was like a Japanese woman who had to be 70, 80. I don't know. She might have been 90. The Japanese age incredibly well. And,
True.
You see that and you go, so what are you going to do? Stop?
Yeah. Quick aside, this came up in like my Instagram or Facebook memories. 10 years ago, I hiked Mount Marcy, which is Lake Placid. I don't know if you know where that is. I think it's the tallest point in the Northeast. We did it in like basically a snowstorm. And I will never forget, like we're like
over here.
What's up? We were decked out and we had like snowshoes on the back of our, tied to our backpacks, which by the way, we did not need at all. The guy just straight up lied to us. So sick rental there. We're decked out and, like North Face head to toe, like we're looking like we're going to like the Arctic Circle. And this guy is just hiking in Air Force Ones. He's just walking through the snow in Air Force Ones. And I'm like, that guy built different. Like now I just feel like I'm inadequate. So anyway, quick aside.
I liked it.
All right, back to the email. I'm a big Sixers fan. Curious to know what you think of VJ's ceiling. I've heard Dwayne Wade comp since he was drafted, but to me seems more like an athletic and bouncy Jimmy Butler. I can't believe how good he has been down the stretch in tight games, and it may be recency bias from last night, but I think I'd actually like to see the ball in his hands at the end of games, even with Maxey walking turnover Joel Embiid and podcast P on the floor. Am I crazy to think that, or do you see it too? I know a lot of people are sleeping on the Sixers because of Embiid and Paul George's help, but I think VJ significantly changes the math on how good this team could be, especially if Maxey can keep playing like a fringe MVP candidate. Thanks, big fan of the pod, Kevin.
I love VJ. He was great last night, even in the loss. I mean, his clutch numbers, the guy's absolutely right. I was looking at it this morning. If you look at the net rating that he has amongst the top games played, guys that are in the clutch here, he's a plus 23. Cade's a plus 20. You run down to like the top 50 guys that have played a lot of minutes. I don't think I saw anyone that was over VJ's. Oh, that's Asar Thompson is over it. And then Duncan Robinson. Like Detroit has these incredible net rating numbers, but it's all because of Cade. And so, VJ with the ball, right? That's like a whole nother level because Maxey's so good that I don't know that you want to do that. The Embiid late possessions when he faces the double are not exactly my favorite possessions ever, but they were running something the other night, or this was last night's game, where, it was just kind of like, it's not even the shot attempt sometimes. And sometimes it's just the other team willing to double or send a second defender, because not every double team is the same. And it does open up some other things. And there was a play where, because I was getting frustrated with Embiid's possessions there late, and yet there was a play where it's just entry pass into him. Embiid's a terrific passer, kicks it out. And I think it was a VJ shot and it was just all wide open. So I wonder how much the VJ stuff, like I have to really like watch and go, okay, is VJ's scoring here all off of something else because you're trying to build some wall against Maxey, and the fact that as soon as you're running with Maxey, you're toast because he's just going to just veer into you and get the call every fucking time. It just drives me crazy because there's nothing. There was a play last night. I think Pickett like went to protect himself against Maxey going into him. He didn't, and then of course the guys like, legal guarding position, like, dude, he was standing there and was like trying to shelter. And then he ended up getting the free throws. Now I'm turning this into a rant that I didn't mean to do. I just think VJ, I think the world of him, man. I mean, what an absolute unbelievable scenario for the Sixers team. Although, the two main pieces, well, Maxey's the main piece at this point, so it's not like you have three guys that are in their prime. You're a title contending team, and then you get to add VJ Edgecombe. But the fact that you still just get to add VJ Edgecombe with everything that happened last year is incredible. Wade's like rarefied air. Wade is somebody like one of my favorite things, and you see this with Castle a lot, by the way, like the rejecting the screen stuff. Like Wade would just consistently beat you by rejecting the screen, and it just didn't seem like anybody could ever figure it out. And Castle's doing it a lot, and I love it. And VJ, there's some similarities with Wade that I think he plays a lot bigger. Like Dwayne always, to me, played bigger than he was in his prime, and you just couldn't do anything with him. You couldn't stay in front of him. But VJ feels like he project to be a better shooter. And VJ's had some just massive, massive moments here lately. But I do think it's harder it's just going to be harder for him initiating all of it as opposed to let Maxey probe, let Maxey figure out. Because, I mean, Maxey's just a stud right now. So, ball in his hands at the end, that's asking a lot. I don't know that I'd go that far. But the player himself, because he had a little bit of a dip after coming onto the scene immediately, being like, this guy's going to be this good already. And, look, you're going to have some ups and downs, but he's like an all-time keeper, man. He's terrific. I love watching him play.
When I watch him, and it's because I watch this other guy a lot, he just reminds me of like if Victor Oladipo like worked out, if he was like actually who Victor Oladipo could have been. And he had that that good run in OKC, a little bit in Indiana too, but
he had that Indiana stretch there where I remember I didn't have a vote yet then, but we did some sort of MVP thing, and I think I had him like 5th halfway through the season. Yeah,
and he just his career was so.
That's
strange.
A great call, Cerruti. I love that call. Yeah.
Well, I think there was some draft comps to that too, and also because like kind of like a tweener guard, a little undersized. But I always had a soft spot for Oladipo. I just thought I really liked him. I thought he was good. He played hard every night, and I just think like when they made that trade, I was like, he's got to get out of Orlando. I'm glad he got a chance to be somewhere else because it would have never. It was the same thing with Aaron Gordon. Like they just had to get out of there. It was never going to work.
Aaron Gordon playing with Jokic also helps too.
So. It also does help. That's true. But so like that may seem like a diss, but I loved Oladipo, and I think VJ, if he's like everything goes right, could be like what he could have been and even better. Wade, future Hall of Famer. I mean, I don't like that's the ceiling. I don't know. It's just like an insane thing to say.
Whatever, man. I mean, feel great about it. Like sky's the limit. Go for it. But I think specific to that question there, I feel like, and again, there's pull-ups where he's just pulling up from 3 and it's not off anybody else either too. So I'm not discrediting any of the shot making. I just think it's like common sense, basketball common sense that I would think without a Maxey out there drawing so much attention because he's just a blur and he's going to get to wherever he wants to go to, it freaks out other defenders. And there's probably a little eating off of that, I would think. But I'll pay attention to it a little bit more the next couple close clutch Philly games.
One more quick one before we get out of here. It's running along. This is from Dylan. Building for the next 5 to 10 years. Who's your dude, Amen or Castle?
Castle, because of the way he understood. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
That surprises me.
His understanding, like I already talked about it with the rejecting the screen stuff, but like some of the stuff that he is doing when he is reading, okay, this is the high screen, and if it's Wemby or if it's with Luke Cornett, and it's like, okay, are you playing the lob? If you're not playing the lob, and then it's like, oh, you're going to come off the corner. And then, all right, well, I'll kick it out there. His command of a possession is better than Amen's. Now, I know Amen's bigger, and Amen is like a 1% of 1% athlete. But I like Castle's offense better in his second year.
I would respectfully take Amen.
Yeah, I think most people would.
And just like you just don't find dudes like that. Was it Windhorst that was basically like, though, the Spurs? Was that Windhorst when he was like the Spurs wouldn't trade Castle for anybody, basically?
Yeah. Like, no, we're not talking about Amen. We're talking like anybody.
Yeah. So maybe I'm just not like a little late to the party. He also says sidebar, pick up running mate, same choice. Would you rather have Amen or Castle?
Amen.
Just to be like, I played with that guy and just see it up close in person and not have to play against it. Yeah.
Throw lobs. And remember in a pickup game, it was years ago. It wasn't recently, but I think it was the only white kid. And a guy, like I made a cut and he threw it baseline to me and I got the layup. And then we were coming back down. He's like, should I throw that lob? And I was like, no, don't. Because I won't be able to catch it and dunk it.
I'll just grab it and come right back down with it.
Yeah, because I was had a few, like, the guys were kind of like, oh, this guy doesn't suck. It's like, hey, should
That's
I
always
throw
such
that
a
lob?
great feeling too. And
Yeah,
like, pick up
but when
guys
I
and
had
do-
to say, don't throw the lob, please,
Yeah.
sir, men would be like, higher.
Yeah.
Throw it higher. Although Castle's not afraid of the rim either. All right, that'll do it for the show today. 10 good minutes, went 38, 37.